There is a hidden market for videographers to earn $10K to $20K per month, and this is the same service that I offer that made me $309,120 in just 365 days. The best part is I don't even have to edit videos anymore. I did this all without a demo reel, without needing to redo my website, no ads, and to make things even more interesting, I did it without employees and while I was getting rid of my video studio. So this happened in the middle of a downsize, and that's proof that any video creator can take this same strategy and start offering it in their business too. If you don't know who I am, my name is Zephan. I'm a videographer based in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'll share more about that in just a little bit. I didn't get lucky, and I know this wasn't a fluke because even in a down year where I took more vacation time and fewer projects, I still made $228,795. Did I mention I also moved to another state and started over where I knew very few people? I've been able to repeat this over and over again in my business. And then on top of that, I've also been able to help more than 300 other video businesses that have worked with me. So I wanted to share with you what my experience has been like, and it's something that excites me because having been in the industry for 15 years, you definitely have times where you get burnt out and you need to find something new to do. I know I was in that spot and couldn't imagine doing this for another 30 years, and then I discovered this hidden market that changed everything for me. And one other thing that I wanted to share is that my parents aren't crazy successful entrepreneurs who can model this for me. My mom works for a college, and my stepdad is a director of a house of worship. These skills were not handed down to me at all, so I'm this weird creative in the family that took a drastically different path. And looking back at my resume, my last job was working at the Apple Store Genius Bar making $38,000 a year. So when you look at numbers that are 5 to 7 times more than that, it's really crazy to think that all of this is possible. So this is just to encourage you and to show you that anyone can do it, and they don't need a special superpower or anything handed down to them to make it happen. And I believe that if you're a video creator who is passionate about making a business out of this, then you can do this too. That whole thing about the Apple Store is where the story all kind of gets started. My full name is Zephan Moses Blacksburg, but I go by Zephan Moses here on the YouTube channel. I've owned a video production company since May of 2013 when I walked into the Apple Store with a resignation letter and shocked everyone by jumping off the deep end. I was still living at my parents' house at the time, and the next day I transformed ZMB Media, a freelance side gig, to an LLC, an illegal entity. I didn't know a thing about accounting, finance, running a business, or invoicing. I was truly just a guy with a dream, and funny enough, I didn't even have a camera at the time. My first client actually had to buy my first camera for me. I worked out a deal in trade where I quoted for something crazy like 20 or 30 videos to film and edit in trade for a Pelican case, a camera, tripod, and a wireless lav mic. It's crazy now to look back and realize I started without even owning a camera, and since that time, I've now built a multiple six-figure business. I've worked with a ton of Fortune 500 companies, I've been flown out to work a red carpet show in Las Vegas, and even filmed in the White House. Shooting, editing, consulting, teaching, and then a few years ago I started this YouTube channel to teach others in the space. I also run a free Facebook group with 13,000 members in it, all learning videography and the business of videography. When I first started, a normal invoice might be $500 or $1,000, and then once I truly mastered the business side, I was no stranger to sending out invoices for $13K, $16K, $17K, and that's just a deposit invoice. So these projects were easily ranging from $20 to $40K. And all this is going to come full circle and make sense in just a moment because all of this happened without needing to run ads or having some crazy advantage like having one company feed you all the work. Okay, so I was editing this and I want to break in here just to talk about the one unfair advantage that I do have, and that's my job that I worked before the Apple Store. My first job out of college was for a company called Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle, or GKIC for short, where I ran a video studio for two of the world's greatest copywriters and marketers, Dan Kennedy and Bill Glazer. And if you haven't heard of them, there's a good chance that you've heard of people like Tony Robbins or Russell Brunson with ClickFunnels. These were the guys that they shared the stage with teaching business and marketing. And while they spoke from the stage, I was behind the camera and editing all of the recordings down into courses and online trainings, but that didn't really mean I was just going to be an expert the next morning just from being in the room with these guys. You might be watching this and maybe you're doubtful because you haven't charged more than a couple $1,000s on a project yet, or you feel like your portfolio isn't quite there yet. And I've had people inside of my trainings that were in similar positions where they had been doing video for a little while and then started to implement what they learned from me, and all of a sudden found themselves quoting projects as high as $230,000 for a 4-month-long event like Carlos did, who had his largest project up until then only total around $10K. Or Ivan, who was able to seal the deal on a $50,000 project across multiple locations and requiring multiple teams, which he didn't have on staff. We also had busy moms like Nellie with 2 kids at home keeping her super busy, who was finally able to price her projects to earn what she is truly worth. All of this is to say that everyone comes from their own backgrounds with their own experiences and situations, and even if you are starting a video business from scratch, it's not too late to start. And this market within the video world is primed and ready for more people to jump in. Now, I can't sit here and preach that I'm the best videographer. In fact, there are plenty of people that are hitting even bigger numbers than I am, working with way nicer cameras, and have been doing this even longer. But because I have this niche that I carved out for myself in the video world, it's given me this unfair advantage and made business so much easier. And it's truly taken away the pain of figuring out how to charge clients for my work, because I'm finally earning numbers that the Apple Store genius me couldn't even dream of. On top of that, I get to share it with you, all because I truly believe that I wasn't given this opportunity just to take this ride alone, and I'd love to have more video creators join me on this journey. So if you're interested and you're a videographer who wants to be charging more, who wants to land better paying projects and working with bigger brands, check out the link down in the description below if you're interested in working with me. Now let's get right back to the video. Here's what the hidden market is, and we'll start with quitting my full-time job and then how I discovered the market from there. I had been pretty stressed out knowing that my job was just that. It had nothing to do with what I went to college for, and it certainly wasn't going to ever get me out of my parents' house at such a low salary. I was a glorified customer service robot who day in and day out was getting yelled at for other people's problems, like their dog died and they never backed up their photos anywhere and recently dropped their phone in a toilet. Now, I'm not heartless. In fact, I love dogs, but I also don't deserve to be yelled at because I'm not the one that dropped the phone in the toilet. You get the gist. When you go to work every day knowing that something like that is going to happen, things need to change. And change they did. I walked in, quit, and started a company. Kinda. And the reason why this is important is because I essentially jumped off a cliff without a parachute, and while I at least had a roof over my head at the time, the clock was definitely ticking. Try explaining to your parents that you just quit your job and didn't have something else lined up, and you'll know exactly what I mean. So I hit the ground running. I started to attend networking events, I hired a business coach, and after I landed my first couple of clients, my parents came around to supporting me and even connected me with a local videographer. We joke that we were set up on a blind date because my mom worked with his mom and they sent us out to lunch to talk shop. But this videographer would hire me as a freelancer on his projects and bring me out to run cameras, lay down cables, and in general just be an extra hand. We'd go to these event spaces, set up a few cameras, run a bunch of cabling, and it all went back to this mysterious box with a computer screen, and somehow would wind up out on the client's website for people to watch. This was pretty new to me since all I had known up until that point was shoot, edit, and upload. The first couple of years that we did this, I was intrigued, but never enough to feel like I needed to know how it all worked. So I mostly kept to it and ran camera for this video business, did my own projects, and didn't really seek out how he was doing it or what it all meant. After a few years, he upgraded the mysterious box, and the new one came with this huge control panel with hundreds of buttons that light up, and he started to teach me how it all worked. Basically, you could take in a bunch of camera feeds or computer feeds and switch them live on the spot like a director at a news station, and then all within the same unit, you could send what we call the program feed out to a live destination where people can watch. This was where I first learned about live streaming, but it didn't really hit me until on one of our gigs, this other videographer pulled out a hard drive from a recording deck and handed it off to the client. Naively, I asked him what it was, and he said, oh, well, it's all done and recorded on there. No editing since we did it all live. And that's when it clicked. He was able to charge clients a premium to be the guy who edits the show live on the spot. And by bringing people in like me, he didn't have to have employees so long as he could get a few guys on the side who would be available for the gig. Not only that, but now he could get paid quicker because the project was done and there was nothing left to edit. So once I knew how all of this goes together, It came down to knowing that, yes, I do want to do something like this, and I should be offering something like this in my business. But how in the world am I going to do it? Because I don't have the money, nor do I have the resources to get this all started. But I remembered that I was pretty resourceful in how I got my first client, and something inside of me knew that I'd be able to figure this all out. So I took a risk and went to the bank and asked for a line of credit. And that allowed me to get some camera gear and this new device called the A10 Mini that Blackmagic Design released. It was way smaller than the unit that my colleague was using, which I later found out was called a TriCaster. And it seemed like if I got this live streaming unit, a few more cameras and other accessories, I could start diving into doing my own events for my own clients. The first event that I did, I hired my colleague because it was a big theatrical program and I was nervous that I'd totally blow it. But things went pretty smooth on the setup, and with his help, and the client was so happy that they were already talking about hiring me again for the same event the following year. Then a friend referred me to a local private school that wanted to make their graduation available to parents and family to watch at home. Again, I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff because I had to staff a crew of multiple camera operators. I had to call the shots and direct them on where the action would be, and I'm letting them know which camera is live all at the same time, so they don't fidget with the focus or whip the camera while it's live. And it was almost a disaster. We were under a tent outside, it was hot and humid, we had to get our power from a generator, and the IT department set up some funky satellite dish to try to beam Wi-Fi out to the tent so that we could get an internet connection. It worked great until a car drove in front of it, blocking the signal, and the stream completely dropped out. I learned a ton that day, but this was the makings of a really cool service that not a lot of other people were selling. But I still had a few problems. First, I didn't know how to charge for this stuff, and I was finding that there was a good amount of work that I wasn't getting paid for, like all the preparation, the phone calls, the meetings that clients wanted to have before show day. Second, every single time that I had a new gig come in, I had to figure out who was available to staff up a crew because I couldn't run all of the cameras myself. And then third, I needed to get more work because if I had debt on the line that needed to be paid off, I need to light a fire under my seat to get new clients to buy this service. Starting with the first problem, which is always on everyone's mind, I was at a fork in the road, and this was a massive growing pain for me. I talked to a lot of different people in the video world about how they price their projects, and it really didn't seem like anyone had nailed it down. And it was very different across the board. Like one video guru that I found was saying that we need to charge for the value we bring to the table. But it didn't make sense in my head because how could I really calculate the value of providing a live stream of a graduation of some high school kid? Like, what's the value of that to grandma sitting in her living room in Ohio watching on an iPad? Like, I guess I could say, hey grandma, like, what would you pay to see your grandson walk across the stage? But I just didn't feel like you could put a value on that. Maybe if you were doing commercial work, you could say, well, this ad will be played on a billboard that averages 10,000 cars driving by a day. But even still, it's not like some guy is standing there with a clicker like, oh, another one looked at it. Another videographer said that you could just charge day rates. Just charge for how many people and how many days they're working. That started to make a little more sense, but how could I explain that to my client that their 2-hour event was going to cost them $1,200 just for Jimmy to show up and run the camera? It made sense to me. They're setting up hours in advance, they're breaking down, so it's not just 2 hours. But if I'm stuck having to explain that to a client, it means they don't see the value of what we're bringing. So I took everything that I learned from other videographers, and I sat down with an Excel sheet and said, what if I could assign a value to each thing? Like the labor is one category, and I'll have set rates for the labor, the equipment is another category, and I'll assign a percentage of the value of the gear to each item, so I know I can pay things off. And I'm also including things like pre-production time, so I'm not ripping myself off for all the time that I spend managing the project and putting together a crew. Which brings me to my next issue that I had to solve, and that was, how am I going to crew up camera guys, assistants for running cables and taping them down, loading gear in and out of venues, and later down the road, I'm really glad that I figured this one out because now I hire PTZ camera operators, I hire video playback assistants, sometimes I'll hire a technical director so I can better manage the client at the event, and on occasion, I'll even hire out the whole project so I can just go on vacation. So I built a system that allows me to price and quote a project once I know a certain amount of details about the gig. It was a simple Excel sheet that I could access from my phone or computer from anywhere. But I needed crew. A long time ago, someone taught me that if you're missing something, You don't have to wait for it to come to you, but you could actually make it yourself. And I found that I was missing a local network of other videographers. So I started one. I made a meetup event on meetup.com and invited 3 or 4 friends to meet at a bar and talk shop. They came out, we talked about contracts and pricing, which was a huge help. But we also got a few new guys who we had never met before. So we did it again a month later, and this time we met at someone's house. And one of the videographers actually offered up to take headshot photos of everyone so that they could update their LinkedIn profiles. We got a few new people, one weird guy who chugged 2 2-liter bottles of soda in the corner, and one studio owner who offered up their space to do the next one. Things grew, and today that group is now a Facebook group with 13,000 people in it. And if you want to be a part of it, it's linked down below this video. Now, any videographer can make a post and explain what they need and where they're located, and they'll be able to find crew members. I guess the lesson learned from both of my problems are that when in doubt or when you're missing something, just build it for yourself. But problem number 3 was going to be a little bit harder because I'm not a genie with a magic lamp, and I can't just grant wishes of getting new clients. Or could I? Well, if there's anything I've learned in this journey, it's been that there's always another way to make something work. And even live streaming will teach you how to do that too. There's a lot of ways to do it, and that's why I like it, because most problems have a few different solutions and routes that you can take. So how does one build a pipeline of clients that you can turn on and off just like a faucet? It took me quite a few years to ultimately distill it down and reverse engineer what I did to get to this point, but I found that it really comes down to understanding the difference between inbound and outbound client prospecting. Inbound clients, or inbound leads, are those that initiate contact with you or your business, while outbound clients are ones that you have to go out and find. This is a big mistake that so many videographers make, and it's thinking that they have to go out and get clients. The truth is, if you create a proper inbound pipeline through various methods that I'll teach more in depth in another video, you rarely have to go out and find the new clients. You know, the ones where you go and make a profile on Upwork and try to get client work on Fiverr, or maybe you constantly spam your video demo reel in some local Facebook group. Let's be real, we know that this doesn't work, yet day after day, people still try to do it. I know because I admin a group with 13,000 videographers, and the amount of people doing this is insane. I spare my group members the trouble by deleting it, and it goes against our rules anyways, but it's because it doesn't work. The whole genie in the lamp technique happens when you do 3 core things. Think of these as your 3 core wishes, if you will. The first is that you need to build a presence online where people can find you. One where they can find out what your business has to offer, what makes you different, where they can see ratings and reviews from real people, and one that shows the quality of your work. The second is by creating a consistent stream of social media content. You increase your chances tenfold of getting in front of other people who now see you as the expert and the go-to person in your industry. The third is leveraging a strong network of other professionals in the industry. A lot of people don't realize this, but nearly half of my work comes in as a referral, whether it's another videographer who is double booked already and wants to pass the project on, or it's an AV company that doesn't have an internal live stream person. Sometimes it's just an event photographer who happened to get asked by their client if they do video, in which case they can rope me into the mix. But all of this building and achieving led me to one big $50,000 problem. You see, things were going good, like really good, and I was bringing in projects left and right. But we all know that if we don't take a break from time to time, you go a little stir crazy. So I reached out to my friend who was living in Hawaii at the time and asked if I could come crash at his place for a week. I had never been, and I figured I could work from paradise as long as I had a computer and some Wi-Fi. Minutes after I landed, I received an email from a massive organization that was hosting their annual conference, and we were still in the middle of a pandemic, so they wanted to do it virtually. Normally, they had thousands of people in a hotel, but now they wanted to accommodate thousands who needed to watch from home. I immediately scheduled a call with them, and despite being 7 hours behind them and needing to be up at 3 a.m. to make the call, it went off without a hitch. I pitched them a $25,000 project, but then it grew and grew, and the project was soon requiring so many more things that the budget ballooned to $50,000. Then the client dropped the bomb on me. YouTube was now a partner for the event. This was going to be big with very little margin for error. As if that wasn't enough, they wanted the live stream translated into American Sign Language live and streamed to another channel, and then also translated live into Spanish and sent to another channel It would be moderated from a studio with virtual guests calling in from all over the world and some pre-recorded videos. One of those videos I recorded was with fashion designer Kenneth Cole. It was pretty scary squeezing this all into a 1,500 square foot studio space that I was sharing with my colleague at the time. And it was almost embarrassing to be working on such a high-end project because our space didn't exactly scream, wow, when you walked into the door. But the big problem was I'm on the other side of the world on a vacation and I needed a crew, I needed to plan, there was a ton of moving parts. But I made it all work, and it's because I kept that same mindset that if I didn't have the answer or solution, I would make one. If I didn't have the resources to make it happen, I'd get them. That's what I want you to take away from all of this, is that everyone starts somewhere. There was a time where I didn't know how this little magical box in a corner managed to get the video feed from the room where the event was happening to a website where people could watch from anywhere. I also didn't know that I could be charging way more for my services once I started doing this, and I certainly didn't know that I could be able to save myself weeks of editing headaches because the show was edited live on the spot. The cherry on top was being able to invoice the second that the event ends and move on to the next one. So why am I all in on live streaming? Well, for one, live events are here to stay. Conferences and meetings happened long before a global pandemic, and they're going to stay long after it leaves. You can practically walk into any hotel with an event center, and there's a good chance that you'll see people wandering around with name badges on in any city. The trade show and conference planning industry was estimated to be around a $900 billion industry in 2020 and is estimated to grow to be a $2 trillion industry by 2028. And two, it's not just conferences that get live streamed. There's a massive uptick in weddings wanting to be streamed for family abroad, local governments are streaming town hall meetings, colleges are streaming graduations, and this means that it's not locked down to one industry where you can sell this service. That's a huge plus if you ask me. So if you're a videographer and you want to grow your video business, put systems in place like a pricing system that actually works, just like it did for Carlos, Nelly, Ivan, and over 300 other people who are selling live streaming services. Check out the link below to learn more about how any videographer can learn to build a 6-figure per year business through live streaming.